Well, Chairman Schatz and Vice Chairman Murkowski, Senator Hoeven, I thank you on behalf of Senator Tillis and I for the opportunity to come in and introduce our legislation to take a wrong and make a right out of it. To say the tribe's been here before would be an understatement. The Lumbee people have been seeking federal recognition from Congress for over 130 years. This committee has been holding hearings on the Lumbee status since 1912. Time and time again, the Lumbee people have proven their case to Congress. This committee's files are full of testimony, letters, reports, and other records which demonstrate beyond any shadow of a doubt that the Lumbee tribe is worthy of full federal recognition. Over the last 33 years, 29 Lumbee recognition bills have been introduced into Congress. 15 by Democrats, 14 by Republicans, showing just how bipartisan this effort has always been. Today is the 15th congressional hearing on Lumbee recognition since 1988, and the 7th in this committee. Over that time, congressional committees have approved Lumbee recognition bills 13 times, including 7 by this committee. The House has passed Lumbee recognition bills 6 times, including 2 overwhelming votes in the last 12 months. I believe no other tribe in the country has been subjected to as much congressional scrutiny over such an extended period of time or received as many repeated expressions of bipartisan congressional support as the Lumbee tribe. Having said that, I recognize some in the audience may not be as familiar with Lumbee and their history as we are. Since time immemorial, the Lumbee have called the present-day counties of Robeson, Scotland, Hoke, and Cumberland their home. They've been a cohesive community in North Carolina for centuries, and they've developed unique tribal institutions that have served their membership well in the face of extraordinary adversity. They've been teachers, farmers, doctors, small business owners. Some have served as sheriff, clerk of court, state legislators, or judges. Many have protected our nation in the armed forces. Their contribution to their community, to the state of North Carolina, to the country are innumerable. Their commitment to education is unparalleled. In the late 1800s, the state authorized the tribe to run the state school district for Lumbee children. The state also authorized an advanced Indian school to train teachers for the Lumbee schools. Although the state provided no money for construction, the Lumbees built the school on their own. It's been in operation continuously since then, and today it's the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. The state of North Carolina recognized the Lumbee tribe in 1885. 3 years later, the tribe began its quest for federal recognition. Over the next 50 years, they repeatedly petitioned the federal government for assistance, but at no avail. Then, during the height of the shameful termination era, Congress passed the Lumbee Act of 1956. This partial recognition designated the Indians residing in Robeson and adjoining counties of North Carolina as the Lumbee Indians of North Carolina. But it blocked them from accessing federal benefits available to other federally recognized tribes, nothing short of discrimination. To put this in context, 4 other tribes were terminated by Congress in 1956, and all have had their federal recognition status restored. Only the Lumbees have yet to receive a full recognition that they deserve. The Lumbee tribe is incredibly resilient, but decades of discrimination have caused severe economic consequences. Robeson County is one of the poorest counties in the state. And while the other 574 federally recognized tribes can use the rights and services offered by the federal government to improve their economic situations, because of the 1956 law, the Lumbee cannot. They're the only tribe in the country in this situation, and it's unjust and it's immoral. This is ample precedent for correcting the injustice, but not the least of which is legislation Congress passed in 1987 to fully recognize the Tiwa Indians in Texas. 19 years prior, Congress had passed a law modeled after the 1956 Lumbee Act, which recognized the Tiwas but prohibited them from accessing federal services. In the Tiwas case, Congress corrected the inequity of the initial decision. It's way past time for us to do the same for the Lumbees. Support for this action is broad and bipartisan. The House version was introduced by Democrat colleagues G.K. Butterfield, David Price, Republican colleagues Dan Bishop and Richard Hudson. The bill passed the House earlier this month with an 85% of members voting in favor. It also passed the House overwhelmingly last Congress. It's time for the Senate to do the same. North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat, has written a letter urging congressional leaders to pass Lumbee recognition without delay. I'd ask the committee to include a copy of that letter to be included in the record. Similarly, both President Biden and President Trump have publicly pledged their support for this legislation. And I'd like to thank in advance Assistant Secretary Nuland, who clearly and unequivocally reaffirms the administration's support of this in his testimony today. Mr. Chairman, I pause here for a second because I think some would say, with all the Lumbees have been through, did they just crawl in a hole and not play a role in the communities they lived in? No, they did exactly the opposite. Without the abilities, without the benefits of federal recognition, this is a tribe under Chairman Godwin's leadership now that didn't let the lack of federal recognition set them back. They made sure that their books were audited and transparent. They went to HUD and they got more money than probably any tribe in the country ever has from HUD, even with recognition, because they were a trusted partner. When North Carolina was plagued with hurricane after hurricane, flood after flood, many of you remember that several years ago, it was Chairman Godwin and the Lumbee Indians that stood up and said to FEMA and to the American Red Cross, you won't find a better partner than us. And starting with the first tragedy through the end, now they're the first call that the American Red Cross makes in southeastern North Carolina to the Lumbees to pre-position, because they know they're the best source logistically to handle the challenges that are going to face that end of the state. In summary, the time for excuses is over. The time for action is now. It's time to finally do what should have been done over 130 years ago. It's time for the federal government to fully recognize the Lumbee tribe. I would respectfully request the support of each one of you in helping make this a reality. I thank the chair.
Thank you, Senator Burr. We're now pleased to have our colleague, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, provide his testimony. Please proceed.
Chairman Schatz, Ranking Member Murkowski, and Governor Hoeven, and Senator, thank you for having me here. One of the beautiful things of following my senior senator and friend after comments like this is that I will just simply associate myself with his comments rather than repeat some of that. But I want to give you an idea of my involvement in this. Back when I was Speaker of the House is when I first found, or really I was aware of the Lumbee tribe, but wasn't really familiar with them in the way I became familiar. I went down there. I saw a cultural center. I saw the work that they were doing in the community. I learned their history. I learned that they had been recognized in 1985 by the state, and they started working on recognition in 1988. I learned that they took it on themselves to educate their children and make sure that their cultural heritage was preserved. I learned that by congressional action, decades later, they denied them that privilege. They were not allowed to teach their children anymore. I learned that their academic performances suffered mightily as a result of that, and I think you'll hear that in Chairman Godwin's comments a little bit later on. You know, I learned that for 133 years, there's an odd thing going on with the Lumbee that is unparalleled by any other tribe that's tried to seek recognition. I also learned that their continued investment is what's produced one of the great teaching institutions in our premier university system at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. I think in the testimony you're going to hear from Chairman Godwin today and from Dr. Hoxie and previous testimony from Professor Campisi, you're going to hear the same thing. They have been in our state for hundreds of years. They have maintained their cultural identity. They have lived in lands that may have shrunk as others took property from them, retreating to some of the swamps in Robeson County, but they stayed there. They maintained their culture, they've made the investments, and they deserve to be recognized. And so with a Democrat I should have to say, for the first 3 years of my tenure here as a senator, I did not sign on to the Lumbee recognition bill. And when I was called on by the chairman to say, why are you doing that? I said, because I don't like making promises that I can't keep. And until I can understand how we create an environment where we can finally seek recognition, I'm not going to give you false hope. What changed? President Trump supported their recognition. President Biden supports their recognition. The administration is going to make a statement today to that effect. The Democrat governor of North Carolina supports their recognition. The Republican-led House and Senate legislature supports their recognition. The vast majority of people in North Carolina support their recognition. So I hope, as we go through this process, that you all will understand the importance it is to the Lumbee people, to me personally, and help us get their recognition done in this Congress. Thank you.